Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the CEO and co-owner of Waterloo Turf, Tim Lovett, and also the founder and co-owner of Waterloo, Lance Ingram. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Frank. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. Excited to be here.
Great. Well, looking forward to having you guys here and talking Waterloo here.
Let's go. Let's talk some
Absolutely.
All right,
Excited to be here.
Let's do it. All right, Lance. So you're the founder. You're the man that started this whole thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a story, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But I started Waterloo in 2021, and I'd actually had prior turf experience going back to 2016. So I actually graduated from college in 2016. Didn't have a job. Thought I wanted to get into commercial real estate or something in that kind of sphere. And so I had a buddy at the time that, he had asked me, do you want to start up a turf company? And so I ended up actually ditching the real estate thing, started up a turf company separately in 2016, ran that until 2018. And then I kind of just got lured into the corporate life. So I saw all my buddies out there traveling, going to different events, things of that nature. And I kind of just, for lack of a better phrase, grass is greener situation. And I went into the corporate world. So I actually left my ownership with that previous turf company, went to the medical device space for about 2 years. And I quickly realized that being your own boss is a lot more fun than having a boss, and reporting to doctors and going into operating rooms and all that good stuff. So in 2021, I actually came back to the turf world and quit my steady medical device job. I started Waterloo Turf the same month me and my wife got married, which wouldn't necessarily recommend that to a lot of people. The honeymoon phase may have not lasted as long as it could have, but my wife was super supportive and things have worked out pretty good since then.
Wow, Lance, that's awesome. Well, actually, you and I have a lot in common. I was in medical device sales too before I got started.
Nice.
Way back in the 90s. And my wife too was extremely supportive when I started out the business, despite how scary it is, right?
Yeah.
When we leave a great career. And it sounds like similar to you, I didn't have passion in that business.
Mm-hmm. No, it's funny, a lot of the potential franchisees that we've been talking to, there's a decent amount of them that are in that medical device space. I think you and I both know the reason for people wanting to opt out of it after a certain point. But no, I mean, I totally agree. I do think that for you to be as successful as you can be as a business owner, as a franchisee, having a supportive spouse is the key to that. So making sure if you're somebody that's in a serious relationship or married, making sure that your partner is on the same page with you is extremely important before you go into a big endeavor like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've come across so many franchise owners as I develop my business. And I would say one of probably the most obvious clue that someone was going to be successful or have great difficulty was how much the kind of support that they got from spouse, partner, family, friends, whatever. Because if you've got people that are rallying around you and supportive, you can get through anything.
Oh, yeah.
And at the same time, I noticed this with franchisees where like the husband was all in and the wife was not all in. And as soon as he got into trouble, it was, I told you so. I knew this was going to be a challenge, but every business is a challenge.
Yeah.
Success is not a straight line up.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, at the end of the day, you are becoming your own business owner. So you're bringing your business home too. And you got to make sure that your spouse is on the same page with you and is fighting for you, is supporting you, being your cheerleader. Because a lot of conversations will end up being about your business.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's bring Tim into this. So how does Tim come into your company? How do you guys find each other?
Yeah, I mean, so Tim and I, we met kind of at a point in time where I was trying to figure out where I wanted to take Waterloo next. So obviously start Waterloo in 2021. And then at the beginning of 2024, I expanded Waterloo to San Antonio. So about an hour or so outside of Austin. Hired a general manager there, and he got up and running pretty quick to the point where I haven't been to San Antonio in well over a year at this point. And so anyways, that was the beginning of 2024. And then in about May or so of 2024, I was trying to figure out, do I want to continue to expand Waterloo corporately and just go city to city to city? Or do I want to go the franchising route? Something I had just kind of been interested in, but didn't have a lot of prior knowledge or obviously experience with. And so it was kind of, Tim and I met at this really pivotal moment in me trying to figure out where I wanted to go with the company. And so we actually met through church. Him and his wife were in a small group with me and my wife. And for the first couple months, we just kind of didn't talk about business. It was more of just like getting to know each other, becoming friends. And then there was one evening we were at a pub, us and a couple other couples, and having a couple.
Why is it always a pub?
Yeah,
it's always in a pub.
There's got to be a pub involved somewhere, right? For it to be a real.
It's where all the best ideas happen.
Yeah, exactly. The back of a napkin.
Exactly. We were out and just kind of like, yeah, so what do you do for work type of situation. That conversation came up, and I was telling Timmy that I own a turf company and this and that, and I was asking what he does, and he was in the franchising space, but he was like, I've been interested in the turf company or turf space for a while. And I kind of thought he was just like blowing smoke, just like making conversation, but turns out he actually was interested in turf. And so we just kind of talked a little bit more about the expansion of Waterloo and bringing it into the franchising space, and conversations continued. And obviously it ended up with us being here where we are now and us kind of joining teams and really bringing Waterloo Turf into the franchising space.
Wow. All right, Tim. So tell me about your franchise background. Where did you cut your teeth into franchising?
I was an operations executive at a home services franchise platform. So really my responsibility there was running the launching team, some of the coaching teams, brand marketing, a lot of the things that would happen after somebody would sign on as a franchise owner with us, and really enjoyed the franchising space. You know, I just love the idea of people coming out of the corporate world and looking to just kind of build their own journey, and you give them the roadmap to get there. And I just love the space. It was really the first time that I had been involved with franchising, but just fell in love with it. And as I started to fall in love with the franchising space, that's when I got interested in turf. I started to see some other brands popping up in home services and being a part of some as well. And, you know, in Austin, turf is just such a huge part of a lot of people's lives here and a lot of people's homes here. And you started to look at the turf space nationally. There's not another national brand name, and there's not really another national franchising company that's associated with artificial turf. And as I started to dig deeper in the industry, I just was shocked that nobody had franchised in turf before. It's got simple operations. It's a huge industry. It's booming. It doesn't require high skilled labor. Really, a lot of the things that you're looking for before you go franchise a company, artificial turf had.
Sure.
And so I started to look at artificial turf companies to franchise for about a year. And that's when Lance and I met. And so when we were at that pub and started to talk about work a little bit more, it just felt like the stars aligned.
Wow. And specifically, what excited you about working with Lance and Waterloo? Like, was it something about this company that you knew this was the right fit?
I had looked at a bunch of turf companies to franchise before this. Had talked with quite a few other artificial turf company owners who were thinking about franchising, and it never checked all of my boxes. I ended up passing on a few companies to go franchise, and I really think it was the right decision. You know, there's companies out there that show good revenue. They've got great operations, but what was different with Lance and Waterloo is as I started to talk with Lance, I think two things really kind of came to the top. Number one, you know, Lance has the story that you just heard about how he became a business owner. He had a job, he left it, was able to get his time freedom back and his financial freedom back. And Lance is really motivated to go give other people that. You know, when Lance and I talked about franchising Waterloo Turf, it wasn't about, oh, I want to go make as much money in franchising as possible. It's how do I give people the life that I have and take that nationally? And so Lance just really believed in a lot of the same things about franchising that I believed in. And the second thing is that Lance is a turf guy. He came into turf straight out of college. It's really kind of the thing that he knows best. And as you start to look at the turf industry, this is not roofing. This is not painting. It's not restoration. Really, the industry has not been around that long. Lance is one of the longer tenured guys in turf that you can find. And so just the knowledge that he had in turf and bringing that into our system, it was different than some other people that I talked with who maybe, they went out and acquired a turf company. They had more of a private equity or finance background or had more of a sales background and worked their way up to owning a turf company. He just really was born in the operations, and I knew that would benefit our franchise owners long term to have that.
Wow, that's wild. It's always a challenge when we bring somebody into our company. It's like bringing somebody into our home. And in your case, you guys didn't know each other, sounds like, for a very long time before you decided to get together, right? And start working as collaboratively. I could only imagine, Lance, since your story, resonates with me, and you left the medical device sales, left medical sales business and weren't happy. Here you are going to be partnering up with somebody. And what were your thoughts? Did you have any challenges, or, what did you think about, I'm going to have a partnership here with this guy and this is your baby?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it is something that, Waterloo is my baby, and it's something I'm very passionate about. I like to keep things for the most part fairly light and fun, but at the end of the day, I'm very passionate about this company and this brand. So bringing somebody else in was a little bit daunting, but at the same time, it really wasn't, because like I said, where Tim and I met, we met at church. So I knew that our background and our beliefs, the fundamental things of what we believe, aligned. And so to me, if you can have that, you can grow from there. And so there was a lot of peace that came with it, just knowing that. And so I think that first step of partnering with Tim, it just felt right. It was something that came on very seamlessly, very organic. And so it's also, pushed forward with all the franchisees that we're looking for. We're being very particular with who we want to bring into this company, and then for them to go out and build their own companies. And so we're looking for the right like-minded people that'll contribute to the overall team as this thing continues to grow. People that honestly we would just want to be friends with, outside of business, that we would want to, be friends with and then work with. So we're being very selective with who we decide to award these to, because we want to build something that's special with like-minded people that are out there to go and win jobs and build a good business.
Sure. That's so smart. And I kind of get a sense that your skill sets complement each other. Tim, what about you from your perspective? You're coming into somebody's company and it's their baby. And what were you thinking when you kind of were going into this? I share this. I ask this question because I talk with so many other emerging founders that are in this situation where they need help and they need to bring somebody in. And you guys are a great example of a partnership that has really worked out well. But I always love to hear from the person that was coming into the company on what they were thinking, what were some of the challenges, and how did it all work out?
Yeah, I agree with Lance 100%. I think that it starts with values alignment, on quite a few different ways. Lance and I were totally values aligned. The first time we sat down formally after the pub conversation to go and talk about the partnership, the first thing that I said was, if we're going to go and do this, Waterloo Turf is going to be about franchise owner profitability. I had this conversation with a couple of other turf company owners, and the first thing that I felt like we spoke about in those meetings were, hey, franchisors are great. They have great exit multiples. I have good relationships with PAE firms. So in a couple of years, we could go sell this thing. But that conversation just never came up with Lance and I. It was, how do we be about franchise owner profitability? How do we help others have the experience that Lance had, getting his time back, getting his financial freedom back from the life that he was living? And so I agree. It felt very natural. It felt very at peace with it. For me, I had looked at a bunch of these things and just had never really quite found the company and the partnership together that I was looking for. And it was pretty clear, I would say pretty quickly in our conversations, that this was the right fit. And just seeing that the pace that Lance and I were able to go put our partnership together and go launch this thing, it just kind of validated a lot of how we thought about business, and then, personally, how we wanted to work within a partnership as well.
Yeah. So Tim, you guys started franchising this year, right? In 2025?
That's correct. Yep. So Lance and I put our partnership together in the summer of 2025. And a couple of months later, we went out and raised capital so that we could go franchise, we decided to go raise capital because we wanted to be well capitalized to build out the franchise support infrastructure before we actually brought franchisees on. So we raised 7 figures of capital and officially started franchising in December of 2025.
Okay. In 2024.
Yes, correct. 2024.
Yeah. And so now I understand you've got 11 franchises, 11 franchise owners, right? And then you have 5 company-owned locations in 2 states?
We have 11 franchise territories across 3 different franchise owners in 2 states, and then 5 company-owned territories. Yep.
Awesome. And what do you think has attracted these franchisees to your system?
I think a lot of them just share, number one, the value system that Lance and I do. They're looking for something more. A couple of our franchise owners were in some type of outside sales capacity, whether it was medical device or another outside sales, and had seen themselves build something for somebody else, and were ready to take their time and their efforts and put it into their own business. So I think that, number one, they align with what we're trying to do. Our goal is we want to be the largest national turf brand in the US. We believe that we have the right strategy through franchising to be able to do that. I think the right people are attracted to that vision because they want to go build something big in their own local market. They're not satisfied just to do this as a side hustle, but they want to go all in the same way that Lance and I have gone all in on this. And so I think just telling that story, and the more people learn about turf, the more people learn about kind of how our franchise system works, it just brings the right people towards us.
Mm-hmm. Tim, what would you say is some of the traits that you need to be successful in your brand?
We call it a team captain. That's who we're looking for. So 2 of our franchisees are ex-college athletes. 1 is ex-military. But for us, a team captain, they just embody the confidence that's needed to run this business. They're not afraid to go out there and lead a crew of subcontractors. They want to go grow a big sales team so that they can go dominate their market. They're not just satisfied with average. They actually want to win, and they want to be a part of a culture, get the playbook, and take some coaching and give some coaching from time to time.
That's awesome. And now, how has the roles changed? Lance, what's your responsibility now?
Yeah, nowadays I am splitting my time. So I've hired out here in Austin, I've hired what we call a turf pro. So he oversees our sales and project management, crew management. And then obviously we've still got San Antonio running with our turf pro general manager out there who's continuing to crush it. So right now I'm more on the franchising side. So jumping on calls, meeting potential franchisees. Obviously our confirmation days, we've had plenty of them at this point. So making sure those run smoothly. They're set up correctly. And then we've recently launched what we call our Fresh and Clean program. And so this is more of what we're using as our recurring revenue opportunity for franchises as well. So we have our big ticket items, which is our bread and butter, our turf installations. But now we're going to capitalize on that. So our goal with this is to turn clients into members. So past install clients can now be Fresh and Clean members, where we set them up on a membership program, whether it's monthly, quarterly, bi-monthly, whatever it might be, and we go out and maintenance their yard. So in our opinion, turf is not maintenance free, it's just low maintenance. And so for it to be able to perform and last as long as it should ideally, while still looking aesthetically pleasing, it needs a little bit of TLC every now and then. And so that's somewhere where we can come in and just at that recurring fee, come by, clean your turf, maintenance it, spray it down with a little Dillo deodorizer, get it smelling nice and clean, and then move on to the next yard. So that's something we've recently launched and something I'm spending a decent amount of time working on right now as well.
That's awesome. That is super smart that you get to have this, obviously a customer base with some recurring revenue. Nothing makes a franchisee happier than an opportunity to have some recurring revenue.
Well, the nice thing about it too is that obviously this is something that we're allowing franchisees to launch as they work their way through their business. So it's not a day one launch. This comes, it's in tiers. So once you hit that benchmark that we've put on paper, you can now level up to the Fresh and Clean status. And so obviously you've got a full clientele list of past installs that you can reach out to, but this is also an opportunity for anybody out there that's installed turf and their turf company that installed it doesn't have a maintenance program, which is pretty often. Well, those are potential clients for us now as well. So it kind of opens up a whole new world to our business, which we're super excited about.
That's great. That's great. Tim, what's the investment range for the franchise?
We are 106 to 134K for one territory.
Okay. And how big is the territory?
Yeah, we like to do large territories. So our territory size is 350,000 in population. A lot of times, just depending on the brand, that could be twice as big as other similar home service brands. But for us, our goal is really around franchise owner profitability going forward. So we'd like to bring in the right people and give them as much opportunity as possible. So we decided to make our territories really as big as we were able.
Tim, so you've got this franchise background, but when you came into Waterloo now, and you've been obviously having franchisees now for the past year, anything surprise you?
I think I've been really surprised just how collaborative the franchisees are with each other. So our three franchisees just signed on not that long ago, and just the amount of conversation that they have helping each other out in their business. Just the other day we had a franchise owner in Houston go out and meet with a couple of new subcontractors. And before he went out to go meet with these subcontractors, he just popped in our group chat. Hey, I'm about to go meet with a couple of subs today who could be installers. Has anybody had good experience with this, and could anybody help me out? And so, he's got access to us and our playbook and what we've put together for that. But I think just seeing that network starting to form from zero is just really special, and just being a part of the DNA that's going to be Waterloo Turf as we continue to grow.
Okay. And are you guys looking for then just multi-unit operators? And you got 3 guys doing 11 territories, or are you looking to, are you guys open to single unit franchise?
Yeah, we're open to either. So currently our average franchise owner owns between 3 and 4 territories each, but we're open to single territory operators. For us, we do look at it on a metro by metro basis. We want to make sure that the right people have as much opportunity as possible. So in a metro like Houston, for example, we actually have stayed away from single territory operators. In a market like that, we would prefer for Houston to only have a couple of owners maximum. But for a smaller area that's also a great turf area, I'll give you an example. Fairhope, Alabama is an area that we're really interested in bringing a franchise owner in. This is a one territory market, and there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of turf going on there, and somebody could come in as a one territory operator and be really successful without having to bump up against a bunch of other franchisees.
That is so smart. I'm starting to meet with more and more brands that are trying to go into these smaller areas that they can really clean up without the competition.
Yeah, we love it. Turf it's a great option in big cities. It's also a great option in smaller markets. One of the things about some of these more rural or smaller markets is, you almost get a little bit more territory than what we even give you, because there's so much space until the next territory. And so if you're somebody that lives, call it 30 miles outside of a major metro area, there's no turf company in your area. So the next closest one is going to be where you have access to. So we're excited about some of these smaller kind of, call them tier 3 type of cities.
Great. All right, Lance, where are we taking this baby over the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, we want to be the largest national turf brand out there. So we want to take Waterloo as far as we can take it. Again, joining with like-minded franchisee business owners with the goal of franchisee profitability. Like Tim said earlier, that's the main reason I got into this, is to try and give this same lifestyle to everybody else. I know the grind of working for the man, and I know the freedom of being a business owner. Being a business owner is a double-edged sword, but the good side of it is a lot more frequent than the other side. So that's what we're trying to give to anybody else out there that's looking for it.
Awesome. Tim, what's going to take for us for Lance to be able to see his vision through? What do you think?
Yeah, we've got 3 things we're really concentrated on for this year, and, probably mostly next year too, that we'd like to see happen. So number 1 is we've got to find the right franchise owners. So people that are excited about that vision and really want to bring that vision into their local market with their own turf business under Waterloo Turf. So the right franchise owners, we can't become the largest turf brand in the US without people that are going all in on their business and are really excited to go dominate the competition locally. Number 2 is we want to build an iconic brand. So a couple of exciting things on that front. We just released our new website. And, for us, when we think about how does Waterloo Turf become an iconic brand, I think a lot of home services focuses on the labor. You see the guy in the polo, the guy that comes up, he's got a good looking smile. I think all that's great. But also in home services, everybody does that now. And so we want to be different. So our brand, we want it to be more about the recreation and leisure that turf can bring. It's who you become after you get turf installed. So you put your phone down, you get off of Netflix, you go outside on your turf yard and kick the soccer ball around with your kid. And you invite your friends over for a barbecue instead of just going to the latest restaurant in town. And one of the stories we've seen a lot in Austin is a lot of times guys, wives like them more or love them more because they no longer play 6 hours of golf on a Saturday. They just chip around in the backyard for 30 minutes because they've got it right there in their backyard. So that's what we want people to see when they think of Waterloo Turf, is bringing recreation and leisure. And, if you've seen our tagline, it's get your Saturdays back. And so we want people to feel like every day is a Saturday after they get turf in their backyard through Waterloo Turf. So building an iconic brand would be number two. And thirdly, we want to continue to enhance and streamline our operational systems so that franchise owners can be more profitable, so that they in turn can reinvest more into their business.
That's brilliant. Tim, most people probably think when they think of turf business, they think, okay, I'm in the landscaping business, but you've made it very clear you're in the giving people back their lives business, right? For them to have recreation time.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't want to be seen as another landscaper. So, we're wearing these hats right now. Lance is our guy in the lab making these hats, but a lot of people in Austin, he's given out so many of these hats and sold them as well. A lot of people think we're a hat company before they actually go on and online and look us up. But that's part of this, is we want Waterloo Turf to be more than just a turf installer. It's a recreation and a leisure lifestyle brand. And we think that will benefit our franchise owners nationwide.
Yeah. What about the turf itself? Anything that makes it different and unique than the other turf that you see out there?
Yeah, we install a lot of high quality turf. So we have, an array of options that we give to the client. We also have an array of options that we can choose from. So the nice thing is that we're not tied down to one supplier or one distributor. So that's both here in Austin, San Antonio, and then any franchisee that comes on board. The options are endless of where we can purchase turf from, who we can source it from, and the different products that we're able to get our hands on. So we have the ability to really get our hands on just about any kind of turf, and that brings a lot of option and flexibility to the clients that we meet with. So that's kind of what we're focused on the product side, is obviously high quality products, having the options to choose what we want to install, and then making it as convenient and affordable for our franchisees and our clients as we can.
What about training and support? Tim, what does that look like?
We do training and support really from the day that somebody signs their franchise agreement. So recently, we actually just eliminated the terms launching and onboarding out of our system. We want people to, as soon as they sign the franchise agreement, you're now a business owner. Now it'll take us about 70 to 90 days to get you kicked off to your first job. But from day one, we want you to start to act like a business owner, because really you are. So training and support is when somebody signs on as a franchise owner, they'll get access to our operating manual. It's over 240 different SOPs and different pages. We have quite a few videos that we've taken from our operations here in Austin so that you can both read it as well as launch it. You'll then come to Austin, Texas for what we call a 4-day in-person training. So we don't want franchise owners installing turf by hand in their local markets. We use subcontracted installers to go and do that. But when franchise owners come to Austin, we're going to be installing turf by hand. So we want them to get a little dirty, get a little sweaty. They'll be working in with our crew, and we want them to understand the turf trade so that when they go back to their market, their crew can see that they're knowledgeable and their crew will respect what they have to say about the project. So we'll be doing a full turf installation in Austin, along with doing the estimating, the sales training, operations, financials, P&Ls, really everything else about the business, but we will be getting our hands dirty. From there, about 30 days later is when they're going to be kicking off their first jobs. And so for that first kickoff date, we will bring our team to come out and kick off your first jobs with you as a franchise owner.
Wow.
We'll be there for about 3 to 4 days. We don't want to take over the job, but really we want to be there to help steward and shepherd your leadership to your crew. We'll give you some pointers on some things that could be done better on the crew or some suggestions that we have. But really it's there to make sure that all of our franchise owners feel supportive. One thing when I talk to Lance, and as I've just learned more about his company, is Waterloo Turf's reputation in Austin was built off of quality turf installations. And so it's something that we want to take into every other market. And so we think that it's a lot for us operationally to really kind of accomplish here, but we just never want a franchise owner's initial jobs to lack quality type of installation because we weren't giving as much support as we could have. So we want to be there through all parts of it.
Wow, that's incredible. Lance, you got to be pinching yourself, man. I mean, this is a far cry from when you left medical sales and starting out, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, I remember I remember being in medical and kind of keeping my eyes on the turf space, kind of keeping tabs on it. And it
Hmm.
was during that COVID period where everybody was at home spending money on home service, items, and turf continued to boom. And I just kind of was kicking myself. There was a lot of, I would say, a little bit of regret when I left it in terms of coming back in, thinking that I was behind. I was starting over completely, where I was like, man, if I had just stayed in what I was doing in my old turf spot, like I wouldn't have to be doing this. But I'm really thankful for the time I was away. I never had any intention on coming back into the turf space, to be honest, when I left it. It just kind of wore on me eventually, and I ended up obviously coming back. But a lot of what we're doing now and the way I operate Waterloo has to do with what I witnessed while I was in the medical device space and the systems and operations, especially being in surgeries and operating rooms, and the way that those things have to be so fluid and dialed in.
Hmm.
And then also just when it comes to clientele and the way of communicating with doctors is the same way we like to try to communicate with clients. Like, it's efficient. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to be timely. So I take a lot of that time, and now we integrate it into Waterloo. So I'm very thankful for my time in medical. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't take credit for the way that any of this has played out. This has been beyond me. It's been a totally answered prayer, just from like even meeting Tim and then now us partnering together, and then even the franchisees we brought on board to, our Turf Pro, our GM in San Antonio, who's been, amazing asset to the company, as well as now our Turf Pro Bobby here in Austin, and then our cleaning guy here as well that we just hired, like all these things. So I'm just at the receiving end of a lot of great people that believed in a funny logo of an armadillo with a little bit of turf coming out the back of it.
I'm not sure if you guys recognize the amount of impact that you're going to be making with folks that are watching this and being part of your brand from a couple different perspectives. Number one, Lance, you gave a great example of how you took a career that you were not passionate about, and you look back now and you took that knowledge and that experience and applied it to a business. And that is something that I think many of us we take for granted. We're in a career that we're not satisfied with. I know for years when I was in medical sales and I was, complaining about it, it was after I left, I realized I never would have had the success I had in my business had I not been in a career that I learned how to work autonomously and how to talk with doctors and being in the OR myself and all of those things that I didn't have appreciation for. And if there's a lot of people that are watching this that are unhappy in their career and they want to become a franchise owner, and I hope they recognize that there was actually life was giving them a gift, that they were learning something in their career.
That's
And the other lesson that I'm, again, as an outsider looking in, is that by you taking this leap of faith and meeting Tim, that you gained an incredible amount of experience that Tim now can come in and he can apply his skill set. And now, Tim, you've got this passionate founder that collectively you guys are doing more than you ever would have done separately.
Yeah, we're excited about where it's going. I think that it all just starts with great people. And yeah, Lance and I, we have a good time. And I think if we find the right franchise owners, they'll have a good time with us and, hopefully blow this thing up to where we want to go. But I appreciate those words, Frank. We're super excited about it.
That's awesome. So, Tim, tell me, why is now a great time for your franchisees to join your brand?
Yeah, I think for each person individually, they've got to kind of get there personally. First, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that we spoke about at the beginning is what we look at when we're interviewing new franchise owners is, are they ready to go all in on the business, whatever that might be? Maybe they're looking to leave a job. They want to put all of their time into it. A couple of our franchise owners, have existing businesses, but they're ready to take a lot of their capital to go build this thing because they see it as another asset that they can have, that they can steward and grow. So is it the right time for them personally? I think is really the big question. But if they're ready to jump into the next thing, turf is a booming industry and there is so much opportunity out there. And so I think just being the first mover in a local market under what's really going to be the first national turf brand is just such a huge advantage for somebody to capitalize on the tailwinds that turf has, including water conservation as well as consumer preferences.
Lance, tell me what's the legacy you want to leave behind with this brand?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, we want to be the largest turf company out there, obviously giving people their Saturdays back. For me, it's a lot of, I just had my first daughter, my first kid about 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So this is something that when I got back into the turf space, a large reason for that was, like I said, started the same month that me and my wife got married. And I saw the grind that a lot of my superiors had to do in the medical device space to get to where they wanted and all the sacrifice they had to make in order to get there. And that sacrifice typically came at the end or on the expense of their family. And so not seeing their kids, not putting their kids down at night, they're always going to dinners with potential doctors or doctors they're working with, and they're not at home with their family. So I saw what it took to get to the level I wanted to get to in that space. And I realized that's not a sacrifice I wanted to make. And so I was willing to make the sacrifice at the time of leaving that steady job to start up Waterloo with the hopes of getting both financial freedom back and also personal life freedom back so that I can have the time to spend with my daughter to eventually, have the ability to take her to school or whatever it might be without asking a boss if I need time off or whatever it might be. So I think just having the ability to spend time with family and not worry about asking for time off is one of the things, but also just being able to show her and our future kids, like if you work hard at something, you believe in something, you're passionate about something, you can go build something really cool, especially if you work with the right people. So that's kind of where my mindset is at, just leaving something behind that, my future kids and current kids can look to.
I love it. Love it. All right. Well, Tim, question for you. If someone was interested in learning more about Waterloo Turf, where would they go?
You can go to our website, waterlooturf.com, and they can click on Own a Franchise, and you submit a submission there, and you'll get in touch with me. And I look forward to talking with you.
Sweet. All right. Last question for you guys. Tim, I'll start with you. I call this the franchise tip jar. It's how I end every podcast because the franchise community, is so generous with sharing information. If a friend came to you and they were interested in buying a franchise of, say, another brand, what would be a piece of advice that you'd give them to make sure they're picking the right franchise?
Yeah, I'd say to look at the people involved. Don't just talk to one person at that brand. Talk to as many people in that brand as you can, whether they're on the franchisor side or they're another franchisee. I think for Lance and I, it's so important that your values aligned with everybody and that you're on the same direction and running the same path, that the only way you can really get a feel for that is talking to as many people as possible within that brand.
That's smart. Lance, what about you? Anything else you want to add to that?
I mean, what comes to mind for me is I would ask them, are they having success and are they having fun? So to me, it's like you need both. And that's what we're trying to offer, is we're trying to offer a successful business plan to franchisees, but we're also wanting to have a lot of fun doing it, because what's the purpose of doing it if you're not having fun at the end of the day? So I would say those two things kind of got to go hand in hand.
Well said. Well said. Guys, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it and wish you guys all the continued success.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Appreciate you having us on.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.